The stars had always called to humanity. For thousands of years, people looked up at the night sky and dreamed of what lay beyond. In the year 2347, that dream finally became real. Commander Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of the ESV Prometheus, humanity's first ship to travel between stars. She was 42 years old, with dark hair turning gray at the edges and eyes that had seen both war and wonder. Behind her stood a crew of 200 brave souls who had volunteered for a journey into the unknown. The ship emerged from fold space, near a massive station that floated in the darkness. It was called Nexus Station, and it was the largest thing any human had ever seen. The station stretched for hundreds of miles, covered in lights and towers and docking ports for thousands of ships. This was the center of galactic civilization, where the mighty conclave of 12 ruled over 400 star systems. Elena's heart beat fast as she looked at the alien vessels around them. Ships of every shape and size filled the space near the station. Some looked like beautiful crystals. Others looked like living creatures made of metal. And all of them were far more advanced than the Prometheus. "Commander," said Lieutenant Park, her voice nervous. "We are receiving a transmission. They are telling us where to dock." Elena nodded. "Follow their instructions and tell the cargo bay to prepare the prototype." The Prometheus was not just here to say hello. Humanity wanted to join the conclave as a junior member. To do this, they had to prove they were worthy. They had to show that humans had something valuable to offer. The cargo bay held humanity's greatest achievement, the Adaptive Neural Combat Frame, or NCFO-1. It was a giant mechanical suit 40 feet tall, powered by nuclear fuel cells and controlled by a single human pilot through a neural link. It had taken 50 years and the combined effort of every nation on Earth to build it. Elena led her delegation through the halls of Nexus Station. The aliens they passed looked at them with strange expressions. Some seemed curious. Others seemed disgusted. A few simply ignored them, as if humans were too small to notice. The great chamber of the conclave was a room so large that clouds formed near its ceiling. 12 platforms floated in the air, each one holding the representatives of the 12 ruling species. At the highest platform stood the Vethkai, the most powerful species in the known galaxy. The Vethkai were beautiful and terrifying. Their bodies were made of living crystal, standing 12 feet tall and shining with inner light. They had ruled the stars for 10,000 years. Their technology was so advanced, it seemed like magic. Their empire had never known defeat. High Arbiter Kethvoran looked down at the humans with eyes that glowed like blue stars. His voice echoed through the chamber like music made of ice. "So, the humans have finally crawled out of their little world. How amusing." Elena kept her face calm, even as anger burned in her chest. "High Arbiter, we come in peace. We wish to join the conclave and share in the prosperity of galactic civilization. We bring a gift to show our capabilities." She gave the signal. The massive doors of the chamber opened, and the ANCF-01 walked in. Its metal feet shook the floor with each step. Its weapons gleamed under the lights. Inside the cockpit, pilot First Class David Chun controlled every movement with his thoughts. For a moment, there was silence. Then the laughter began. It started with the Vethkai. Kethvoran's crystalline body vibrated with amusement, producing a sound like breaking glass. Soon the other species joined in. The whole chamber filled with the noise of alien laughter. "This," Kethvoran said, pointing at the ANCF-01, "this is your great achievement? A walking coffin made of primitive metals? Powered by chemical fuel? Piloted by a creature that dies after 90 years? He waved his hand, and a Vethkai drone appeared. It was small, no bigger than a human fist, but it moved faster than the eye could follow. In 3 seconds, it flew circles around the NCFO-1, scanning every part of it. Your machine would not survive 10 seconds against our oldest technology, Kethvorin declared. Your species has been traveling through space for less than 300 years. We have ruled this galaxy for 10,000. You are children playing with toys. Elena's hands formed fists at her sides. We ask only for a chance to prove ourselves. Your application is denied, Kethvorin said, his voice cold and final. Return to your little solar system. Come back when you have evolved past this embarrassment. Perhaps in 1,000,000 years, you might be worthy of our attention. The laughter continued as Elena led her delegation back to the Prometheus. Pilot David Chun walked the ANCFO-1 back to the cargo bay, his face red with shame and fury as the ship prepared to leave. Lieutenant Park looked at her commander. What do we do now? Elena stared out at Nexus Station, watching it grow smaller as they flew away. Her eyes held something strange. Not defeat, not sadness. Something harder. Something sharper. We go home, she said quietly. We tell Earth what happened. And then we get to work. Work on what? Elena turned to face her crew. Every person on the bridge was looking at her, waiting for her words. They laughed at our prototype, she said. They called us children. They said we were not worthy. Her voice grew stronger. So we will become worthy. Not in 1,000,000 years. Not in 1,000. We will show them what humanity can do when we have something to prove. The Prometheus jumped into fold space, carrying its crew back to Earth. The Vethkai had already forgotten about the humans. They were too small to remember. That was their first mistake. 50 years passed. Then 50 more. In that century, humanity sent 12 more delegations to Nexus Station. Each time, they brought new technology. Each time, they asked to join the conclave. And each time, they were laughed at and sent home. The Vethkai found it entertaining. High Arbiter Kethvorin ordered recordings of each human visit to be broadcast across the galactic network. Billions of aliens watched and laughed as the clumsy human machines failed test after test. The NCF units became a joke. Comedians across 100 worlds made fun of them. Children played games where they pretended to be slow, stupid humans with their walking coffins. On a planet called Verthus Prime, a young alien named Torek watched one of these broadcasts with his family. They laughed as a human combat frame tripped over a small rock and fell down. The Vethkai testing drone had destroyed it in 4 seconds. Why do they keep trying? Torek asked his father. Because they are too stupid to know they have already lost, his father replied. The humans are primitive creatures. They will never be anything more. Torek nodded and forgot about the humans. Everyone did, but on Earth, something very different was happening. Commander, Elena Vasquez had returned from that first mission with a fire in her heart. She stood before the United Earth Council and told them everything. She showed them the recordings of the laughter. She showed them how the Vethkai had treated humanity like insects. They think we are nothing, Elena said. They think we will always be nothing. And if we accept that, they will be right. The council voted that night. Every nation on Earth agreed to a single goal. Humanity would prove itself worthy. Not through begging. Not through diplomacy. Through becoming so powerful that the galaxy could never ignore them again. The project was called Silent Thunder. Every scientist, every engineer, every brilliant mind on Earth was brought together. The best military strategists worked beside the greatest physicists. Doctors and soldiers shared ideas. Artists and programmers created together. Humanity had always been divided by nations and languages and beliefs. Now, for the first time in history, they worked as one, and they did it in complete silence. Human trade ships still visited alien ports. Human diplomats still smiled and asked polite questions. But they never talked about what was happening on Earth. The military went dark. The research station sent no signals. When aliens asked about human technology, the diplomats just shrugged and said, "We are still learning. We are still primitive." The Vethkai believed them. Why would they not? Humans had proven themselves to be slow and weak. Their lifespans were short. Their bodies were fragile. Surely they could not advance fast enough to matter. This was their second mistake. Dr. Marcus Chen was born in 2401, 54 years after the first humiliation. His grandfather had been pilot David Chun, the man who had walked the NCFO-1 into that laughing chamber. David had died before Marcus was born, but the old man's story had been passed down through the family. They laughed at him. Marcus's mother told him when he was a boy. They laughed at your grandfather's life work. He died with that shame in his heart. Marcus grew up watching the alien broadcasts that mocked humanity. He watched them laugh at his grandfather's creation. And slowly, a cold fire grew inside him. He became a scientist, the best on Earth. By the age of 30, he was leading the most secret project in human history, the next generation of ANCF units. The original design had been good, but limited by the technology of its time. Now, a century of focused research had changed everything. Humanity had cracked the secrets of quantum energy. They had learned to fold space in new ways. They had discovered how to extend human life far beyond its natural limit, and they had created something that would shake the foundations of the galaxy. Marcus stood in an underground laboratory, looking at the machine before him. It was an ANCF unit, but it looked nothing like the clumsy prototype his grandfather had piloted. This machine was sleek and beautiful, made of metals that did not exist on any alien database. Its weapons did not fire bullets or lasers. They manipulated reality itself. "Sir," said one of his assistants, "Admiral Vasquez is here." Marcus turned. Elena Vasquez walked into the laboratory. She was 147 years old now, kept alive by the longevity treatments that humanity had developed in secret. Her hair was fully gray, but her eyes were still sharp, still burning with that same fire from a century ago. "Is it ready?" she asked. Marcus nodded. "The first 50 units are complete. Another 200 will be ready within the year." Elena walked up to the machine and placed her hand on its chest. "My great-great-granddaughter will pilot one of these," she said softly. "She is training now. She is the best pilot we have ever produced." "Like her ancestor," Marcus said. Elena smiled, but there was no joy in it. "They are still laughing at us, you know? I watched a broadcast last week. Some Vethkai comedian was making jokes about human lifespans. He said we die so fast that we forget what we learned." She looked at Marcus, and her smile turned sharp. They have no idea what is coming. Far across the galaxy, the Conclave continued their rule without worry. The Vethkai celebrated 10,100 years of dominion. The other species bowed and obeyed. None of them noticed the silence coming from Earth. None of them wondered why human ships had quietly stopped visiting alien ports. None of them suspected that humanity was not hiding their failures. They were hiding their success. And the time to reveal it was almost here. The ruse came without warning. They were a species from the dark edges of the galaxy, where no conclave ship had ever traveled. For centuries, they had been building their strength in secret. Their empire had grown in the shadows, feeding on the weak species that lived beyond conclave protection. And now they were hungry for more. Their invasion fleet appeared near the outer territories on a cold morning in 2447. 10,000 warships, each one carrying weapons of terrible power. They did not ask for surrender. They did not make demands. They simply attacked. The first conclave world to fall was Verthas Prime. Torek was an old man now, with children and grandchildren of his own. He had lived a comfortable life under Vethkai protection. He had never known war. He had never known fear. He learned both on the day the Rurs came. The sky turned red as the alien ships descended. Buildings exploded. People screamed and ran. Torek tried to reach his family, but the streets were chaos. The last thing he saw was a Rur soldier raising its weapon. Verthas Prime fell in 6 hours. 12 million people died. The survivors were taken as slaves, and this was only the beginning. One by one, the outer worlds fell to the Rur's invasion. The Conclave sent fleets to stop them, but the Rurs were stronger than anyone had expected. Their weapons cut through Vethkai shields. Their soldiers fought without fear of death. In 8 months, 17 species had been conquered. The Vethkai were losing. High Arbiter Kethvorin stood in his private chamber on Nexus Station, watching the war, reports with growing horror. His people had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years. They had never faced a threat they could not destroy. But the Rurs were different. The Rurs were relentless. "We need more soldiers," his advisor said. "More ships. More weapons. Where?" Kethvorin demanded. "Every fleet is already fighting. Every factory is already building." His advisor was quiet for a moment. Then, slowly, he said, "There is one species we have not called upon." Kethvorin's crystal body flickered with surprise. "The humans? Those primitives? What could they possibly offer?" "Bodies," the advisor said simply. "They breed quickly. They die easily. But there are billions of them. If we send them to the front lines, they will slow the Rur's advance. They will buy us time to build more ships." Kethvorin considered this. He had not thought about humans in decades. They were so small, so unimportant. But his advisor was right. Dead humans would be useful. "Send them a message," he ordered. "Tell them they are now part of the Conclave war effort. Tell them to send every soldier they have to the front lines." Immediately, the message arrived on Earth 3 days later. Admiral Elena Vasquez read it in her command center, surrounded by her most trusted officers. She was 147 years old, and she had waited her entire life for this moment. The message was not a request. It was a demand. The Vethkai did not ask for humanity's help. They ordered. They expected humans to die for a conclave that had laughed at them, mocked them, and rejected them for 100 years. "What is your response, Admiral?" asked Captain Sarah Chun, Marcus's granddaughter, and the best pilot in the human fleet. Elena smiled. It was not a kind smile. She activated a communication channel and sent 4 words to Nexus Station. "We remember your laughter." Then she gave the order that humanity had been waiting for. Launch the fleet. Across human space, hidden shipyards opened their doors. Ships emerged from asteroids, from moons, from places no alien sensor had ever found. 2,000 warships, each one carrying technology that the galaxy had never seen. Their engines bent space in ways the Vethkai had declared impossible. Their hulls were made of materials that did not exist in any conclave database, and at the center of the fleet, stored in the cargo bays of the largest ships, were the Titans. That was what they called the INCF units now. They were not prototypes anymore. They were weapons of war beyond anything the galaxy had ever known. Each one stood 60 feet tall, covered in armor that could resist the heat of a star. Their weapons did not shoot. They erased. They removed matter from existence at the quantum level. Captain Sarah Chun sat in the cockpit of her Titan, feeling the neural link connect her mind to the machine. It felt like growing a new body. A body of metal and power. A body that could not be stopped. All pilots report status. Admiral Vasquez's voice came through the communication system. One by one, 500 voices responded. 500 titans. 500 of humanity's best warriors. Each one merged with a machine that had been a century in the making. Fleet is ready. Admiral, Sarah reported. Elena stood on the bridge of her flagship, the ESV Prometheus II, and looked out at the stars. For 100 years, she had dreamed of this moment. For 100 years, she had worked and planned and waited. The Vethkai wanted cannon fodder. They wanted humans to die as distractions. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Set course for Nexus Station, Elena ordered. Maximum speed. It is time to show the galaxy what humanity has become. The fleet jumped into fold space and vanished. The war was about to change. Nexus Station was burning. The Rurs invasion fleet had finally reached the heart of the conclave. 6,000 warships surrounded the massive station, pouring fire into its shields. The Vethkai defense fleet fought back desperately, but they were losing. Ship after ship exploded into flames. The shields were failing. In hours, perhaps minutes, the station would fall. High Arbiter Keth Voran stood in the command center, watching his empire crumble. 10,000 years of Vethkai rule, ending in fire and blood. His crystal body trembled with emotions he had never felt before. Fear, despair, and something close to regret. The humans never responded to our message, his advisor said, voice shaking. They have abandoned us. Cowards, Keth Voran hissed. Ungrateful primitives. When this is over, we will make them pay for their betrayal. A young officer suddenly cried out. Sir, new contacts appearing from fold space. Unknown signatures. Keth Voran turned to the display screen. His crystal eyes widened. 2,000 ships emerged from nowhere, forming a perfect wall between Nexus Station and the Rurs fleet. They were beautiful and terrifying, built in shapes that seemed to flow like water. Their hulls shimmered with energy that Vethkai sensors could not identify. Their weapons glowed with a light that hurt to look at. What? What is this? Keth Voran whispered. A communication channel opened. A human face appeared on the screen. A woman, old but strong, with gray hair and eyes like steel. This is Admiral Elena Vasquez of the United Earth Fleet, she said. We received your message, High Arbiter. We remember every word of it. Before Keth Voran could respond, Admiral Vasquez turned to address the Rurs fleet. Attention, Rurs hegemony. This is your only warning. Retreat now, and you will be allowed to leave in peace. Continue your attack, and you will be destroyed. The Rurs commander's response came quickly. It was laughter. Deep, rumbling laughter that echoed through the communication channels. 2,000 ships against 6,000? The Rurs commander mocked. You humans are even more foolish than the stories say. We will crush you, then we will crush the Vethkai, and then we will come for your pathetic little planet. Admiral Vasquez's expression did not change. So be it. She gave a single order. Release the Titans. The cargo bays of the human ships opened. 500 figures flew out into space, each one glowing with power. They were the ANCF units, machines that had once been mocked as walking coffins. But they were not coffins anymore. Captain Sarah Chun led the charge. Her Titan moved through space like it was swimming through water, faster than anything that Psi should be able to move. She could feel everything through the neural link, the cold of space, the heat of enemy weapons, the heartbeat of her machine. The Rurs fired everything they had at the approaching Titans. Missiles, lasers, plasma, kinetic rounds. The attack struck the Titan armor and simply stopped. The energy dispersed. The missiles fell apart. Nothing could penetrate the shielding that humanity had spent a century perfecting. All pilots, Sarah commanded. Engage. What happened next would be remembered forever. The Titans did not fight like normal weapons. They did not shoot or slash or explode. Instead, they erased. Their quantum weapons reached out and touched the Ruhr's ships, and where they touched, matter ceased to exist. Huge sections of enemy ships simply vanished, leaving nothing behind. Not debris, not dust, nothing. Sarah flew through the heart of the Ruhr's fleet, her Titan dancing between enemy ships. She reached out with her weapons and erased a battleship. Then another. Then another. Around her, the other Titan pilots did the same. The Ruhr's tried to run. Their ships turned and fired their engines, desperate to escape. But the human fleet was faster. The 2,000 warships of the United Earth Fleet closed in from all sides, and their weapons joined the attack. In the command center of Nexus Station, Cathform watched in silence. His crystal body had stopped trembling. He was too shocked to move, too shocked to speak. Around him, his officers stared at the screens with expressions of pure disbelief. The battle lasted 11 minutes. When it was over, not a single Ruhr's ship remained. The entire invasion fleet, 6,000 warships, had been completely erased. The space around Nexus Station was empty and clean, as if the enemy had never existed at all. Admiral Vasquez's face appeared on the screen again. She looked at Cathvorin, and he saw something in her eyes that made his ancient heart freeze with fear. "High Arbiter," she said, her voice calm and cold. "A century ago, you laughed at us. You'd called our technology primitive. You'd called us children playing with toys. You said we should return when we had evolved." She leaned forward, her eyes burning. "We have evolved." The human fleet surrounded Nexus Station now, their weapons pointed at the heart of the Conclave. The Vethkai defense fleet, what remained of it, did not dare to move. Everyone knew that the humans could erase the station just as easily as they had erased the Ruhr's. "You demanded that we send our soldiers to die for you," Vasquez continued. "You wanted us to be your cannon fodder, your distraction, your sacrifice." She paused. "We have a different offer." Captain Sarah Chun brought her Titan to hover outside the main window of the command center. Through the glass, Cathvorn could see the massive machine looking at him. Looking through him. The weapon that he had once called a walking coffin was now the most powerful force in the galaxy, and it was waiting for his answer. "What do you want?" Cathvorn finally managed to ask. Admiral Vasquez smiled. It was not a cruel smile, but it was not a kind one either. "We want to talk about the future," she said. "The future of this galaxy. And this time, you will listen." The High Arbiter of the Vethkai, ruler of 400 star systems, master of an empire that had lasted 10,000 years, lowered his head. "I am listening," he said. The great chamber of the conclave had never been so quiet. Every seat was filled. Representatives from all 12 ruling species sat in their floating platforms, but they did not look powerful anymore. They looked afraid. Below them, hundreds of delegates from the lesser species watched and waited. For the first time in 10,000 years, everyone was equal in their uncertainty. Admiral Elena Vasquez walked into the chamber alone. She was 147 years old, small and gray-haired, wearing a simple military uniform. She had no guards, no weapons, no show of force. She did not need them. Everyone in the room had seen what her fleet could do. Everyone knew that if she gave the order, this station and everyone on it would cease to exist. But she was not here to destroy. High Arbiter Cathvorin stood on his platform, his crystal body dim with shame. He had ruled this galaxy for centuries. He had commanded fleets and decided the fates of billions. Now he waited for a human, a member of a species he had once called primitive, to tell him what would happen next. "Admiral Vasquez," he said, his voice small and tired. "You have defeated the Ruhr's. You have proven your power. What do you want from us? Territory? Resources? Slaves?" Elena looked up at him. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then she began to speak. 100 years ago, I stood in this chamber for the first time. I was young then, full of hope. I believed that the galaxy would welcome humanity. I believed that we could join the conclave and learn from the older species. I believed in cooperation and friendship. She paused. You laughed at me. The words hung in the air. Kethvorn flinched. You laughed at our technology. You laughed at our lifespans. You laughed at our dreams. You broadcast our failures across the galaxy as entertainment. You taught every species in your empire that humans were worthless, that we were a joke. Elena's voice remained calm, but there was iron underneath it. And when your empire faced destruction, you did not ask for our help. You demanded it. You ordered us to send our people to die for you, to buy you time with our blood. You did not see us as allies. You saw us as tools, as sacrifices, as nothing. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of every delegate. So now you ask what we want. You expect us to conquer you, to enslave you, to do to you what you would have done to us. Kethvorn closed his eyes, waiting for the sentence. We refuse. The chamber erupted in confused murmurs. Kethvorn's eyes opened in shock. What? Elena smiled, and for the first time, it was a warm smile. We refuse to become what you were. We refuse to build an empire on the suffering of others. We refuse to rule through fear and power alone. She raised her voice so everyone could hear. The Conclave of 12 is finished. Today, we create something new. She activated a display that appeared in the center of the chamber. It showed a simple image, a circle made of hundreds of stars, each one equal in size. The Assembly of Equals, Elena announced. A true federation where every species has one vote, where no one rules over others, where the strong protect the weak instead of exploiting them, where a species that discovered space travel yesterday has the same voice as a species that has traveled the stars for 10,000 years. Silence filled the chamber. The delegates looked at each other in disbelief. This was not how power worked. This was not how the galaxy had ever worked. A delegate from one of the lesser species, a small creature with 6 eyes, raised a trembling hand. Why? It asked. You have the power to take everything. Why would you give it away? Elena turned to the small creature and knelt down so they were at the same level. Because power without justice is just another form of cruelty, she said gently. Because if we become conquerors, we lose the very thing that made us strong. Humanity did not survive by being the biggest or the fastest or the oldest. We survived by working together, by lifting each other up, by refusing to give up even when everyone laughed at us. She stood and faced Kethvorn again. You tried to teach us that the galaxy respects only power. You were wrong. True strength is not about who can destroy the most. It is about who can build something that lasts. Something that gives hope instead of fear. The old Vethkai was silent for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was different, softer, almost humble. We have ruled for 10,000 years, he said. We thought we were wise. We thought we understood the universe. He looked at Elena with something new in his crystal eyes. We were fools. He stepped down from his platform. For the first time in the history of the conclave, a high arbiter descended to stand among the common delegates. He walked until he stood before Elena, towering over her dot. Then he bowed. The Vethkai accept your proposal, he said. We will join your assembly of equals. We will learn this new way, even if it takes another 10,000 years. One by one, the other species joined him. The chamber filled with the sound of voices agreeing, accepting, hoping. Creatures that had been enemies for centuries looked at each other and saw, perhaps for the first time, partners far away on Earth. Dr. Marcus Chen watched the broadcast in his laboratory. He was an old man now, his hair white, his hands shaking. Behind him, preserved in a glass case, stood the original ANCF01, his grandfather's walking coffin. The machine that everyone had laughed at. Marcus walked to the case and placed his hand on the glass. "We did it, grandfather," he whispered. "We showed them what we could become. And then we showed them something better. We showed them who we really are." The broadcast showed Admiral Vasquez shaking hands with the delegates, human and alien together, building a new future. Marcus smiled through his tears. The galaxy had laughed at humanity's prototype. They had mocked human dreams and human ambition. They had called humans primitive, weak, and worthless. Now humans had the power to destroy them all. Instead, they chose to save them. That was humanity's true strength. Not their weapons, not their technology, their hearts. And as the new Assembly of Equals held its first session, as ancient enemies became friends, as the galaxy began to heal from 10,000 years of fear and domination, the universe learned a lesson it would never forget. Never laugh at humans. Not because they will destroy you, because they might just save you instead.